is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we have ourselves a crazy, jam-packed show for you all, as we have NVA to recap, and we had ourselves quite the weekend in NCAA men's volleyball, as the MIVA came down to the wire. It came down to the last day of the regular season. Who came out on top between Ball State and Loyola, and who is basically taking second in the regular season? Also, we had some interesting matchups, such as UC San Diego and Long Beach State. Even Stanford and BYU was in there when it came to all these crazy matches. And the NBA, like I said, just wrapped up week one. Who were the winners? Who unfortunately fell short? And who are some teams that shot? So set up the net. Hand me a volleyball, because I'm about to serve you off some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. I hope you all are having a great Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday anything. Hope your Monday is going great. Without any further delay, let's get on into that volleyball goodness that we just had. But first and foremost, we have a word from our sponsor. IE Sports Radio is proud to call the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team the official sponsor of IE Sports Radio. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed trapped for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you have been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow them on social media at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, and on Facebook by typing in the word Southern California Warriors. And then IE Sports Radio, the platform that we are on, is available on Twitter at IE Sports Radio and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio and on Facebook by typing in the word IE, then sports, then radio. Also, IE Sports Radio has a website, www.iesportsradio.com, where when you go there, you'll find a Patreon link with 5 different tiers, with the first one starting off at $5 a month. This donation will get you a shout from all 29 of our shows, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on IE Sports Radio's flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 7.5 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country, as well as sports. All the while, IE Sports Radio has been continued to be by the fans and for the fans, and with your help, we're ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you everyone for all of your support and for helping make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. And the 2022 NFL Draft is right around the corner, and IE Sports Radio is excited to announce its 3rd annual Mock Draft Challenge. The rules are simple. Predict all 32 first-round picks. No trades, modifications, tricks, or any of that funny stuff. The participant who has the best mock draft will receive a shout-out on all of IE Sports Radio's 29 shows, and their choice of an IE Sports Radio hat or t-shirt. For more information to submit your mock draft, please reach out to Mike Pat on Twitter at Let's1_IESR. His Twitter information will be in the description of the show. And best of luck to those that want to participate. And then also, we have to give a shout out to IE Sports Radio's Fan of the Month, Marcy_Vargas88. That is her Twitter name. She is a Packer fan from Mexico. Like I said, IE Sports Radio is starting to go global. Kind of like DJ Khaled, but I digress. But jokes aside, we would like to give a big shout out to Marcy Vargas for being IE Sports Radio's Fan of the Month for April. Thank you for your support. And without any further delay, let's get on into that volleyball deliciousness from this past weekend. So we had a lot of NCAA men's volleyball noteworthy matches to go over, but due to time constraints, I'm only going to go over 4 of them. And we'll go over the entire big-time matches from the MIVA, as we'll start with Thursday's match of the week, or my match of the week in my opinion. Number 7, Ball State versus number 11, Chicago. It was quite simple for Ball State. If they win, they're outright regular season champions. If Loyola wins, they'll be tied atop the MIVA going into Saturday while having the tiebreaker over Ball State. Early on in set 1, Ball State led 5-3, only for Loyola to score 4 in a row to go up 7-5. Before we continue, we'd like to give a shout out to Adam Karnick in the chat room. He just finished his show, Chi-Town Weekly. His show goes on 1 hour before set point goes on, so we gotta give a shout out to Mr. Adam Karnick. Thank you for tuning in. I definitely appreciate you. Back to the match. Ball State tied it up at 9-9, but Loyola scored 2 in a row to go up 11-9, and from there it was a game of cat and mouse. Each time Ball State wanted to get within 1, Loyola had an answer. It was until Loyola scored 3 in a row to turn a 14-13 lead into a 17-13 advantage, forcing Ball State to call timeout. And from there, Ball State got as close as within 3, as Loyola took the first set 25-18, setting the tone early. As the Gentile Arena was rocking, this one took place in the Windy City. Set 2, Ball State had an early advantage, only to see it be erased by Loyola, as the Cardinals' last lead came at 3-2. With it being tied at 4-4, it looked as if we were headed for a cat-and-mouse set. Only this time, Loyola wasn't in the mood for games. Leading 7-6, Loyola scored 6 straight points, and suddenly that 7-6 lead expanded into a 13-6 lead. Loyola led by as many as 8, and they stormed to taking set 2, 25-19, and a 2-0 lead in the match. At that point, Gentile Arena was rocking. All Chicago fans were celebrating this like the 96 Bulls. Ball State needed something needed a spark. They needed a quick turnaround. They needed something to turn the tides. In set 3, they used a 4-0 run to snap a 3-3 tie and lead 7-3. And Ball State actually gave Loyola a taste of their own medicine in the set, as whenever Loyola got close, Ball State had an answer or two. That, however, didn't deter Loyola, as slowly but surely they worked away at the lead, and when trailing 14-12, they went on a 3-0 run to take their first lead of the set at 15-14. After a service error from Loyola, tying the set at 15-15, it was basically a tug-of-war between both teams exchanging the lead away and tying the score up. With it being tied up at 21-21, Ball State used a block on one point and a kill on the next to go up 23-21, forcing Loyola to burn a timeout. Ball State had set point after Caleb Jennis registered a kill, and it looked as if we were going to a fourth set as Ball State found itself up 24-21. Not so fast, however. Loyola scored 3 straight points via a Ball State service error, a kill from Parker Van Buren, and a Ball State hitting error, and suddenly it was 24-24 as Gentile Arena was on its feet. And after both teams exchanged service aces, Loyola missed another serve, which had Ball State at its 5th set point, but Van Buren knotted up the score at 26-26 with a kill of his own. The next point saw Loyola score defensively as they had a block, which gave them their first match point, and they wasted no time as Garrett Zolg, the setter, got his first and only kill of the match. Except it was actually the biggest kill of the match, which gave Loyola set 3, 28-26, and the celebration was on in Gentile Arena, as Adam says that arena is great. So, at that point, before we go on into the noteworthy stats, going into the final day of the MIVA, which was Saturday, both Loyola and Ball State were tied at 11-2 in the conference standings. And here was the scenario. If Loyola were to beat Ohio State, then they would be the number 1 seed of the MIVA tournament. However, for Ball State, if Loyola were to lose to Ohio State and then Ball State were to beat Purdue of Fort Wayne, then Ball State would be the number 1 seed, and they would be the outright MIVA regular season champion. Looking at the box score between Ball State and Loyola, Parker Van Buren led Loyola with 15 kills. He had a hitting percentage of .448, which was very impressive. Cole Schlafhauer added 11 kills, and then Jimmy Meinhardt added 7 kills. No hitting errors. He hit a perfect 1,000. Garrett Zolg chipped in 31 assists, and contrary to what I said, it was actually his 3rd kill of the night. So that wasn't his first kill, but it was the first kill of set number 3. So regardless, it was a big kill. He also added 9 digs, as well as Henry Payne, who also chipped in 2 kills as well. As a team, Loyola hit .371, which was quite impressive, and despite getting outblocked by a half, they actually outdug Ball State 32-24. Ball State was led by Caleb Janis, who had 15 kills, while Angelos Mandelaris added 14 kills. Both of those players hit high hitting percentage, as Janis hit .433, while Mandelaris hit .370. Everyone else was basically a distant... Their next kill leader had 1 kill, and that was 5 different players, so I need not mention any of those players, unfortunately. The thing about Ball State was that they had 0 service aces. They missed 14 serves, while Loyola of Chicago, despite missing 16 serves, had 8 service aces. That's way too much, and 4 of which came from Garrett Zolg, so that was unacceptable from Ball State. And this was a big match for Ball State. They needed to win this match just because I understand Loyola handed them their first conference loss, but you cannot afford to lose on the road. I get it, Loyola is playing some of its best volleyball, despite having a most recent loss to McKendree a couple weeks ago. But this is where you have to come up big. If you can't win in Chicago, you're sure as heck not going to be winning at UCLA, which is where the NCAA tournament is going to be held. And all of its matches are going to be held at UCLA, not just the finals and semifinals. So now we jump to Saturday, the biggest day of the MIVA between Loyola and Ball State. We'll start with the Loyola and Ohio State matchup because in terms of time purposes, that was the first matchup that happened chronologically. So Ohio State at Loyola. Loyola knows what's at stake here as a win, and they're the number 1 seed. A loss, and it's in the hands of Purdue of Fort Wayne to try to carry them to the number 1 seed. Ohio State, on the other hand, had won 2 in a row, having recently beaten Purdue of Fort Wayne in 5 sets on Thursday, as their 2 straight wins have both come in 5 sets, which last week they defeated McKendree. So set 1. I don't know what Kevin Birch's game plan was going into this match, but it sure as heck was a good one, as Ohio State jumped out to a 7-1 lead, and during the run, which was a 6-0 run, Loyola had to burn one of their timeouts. To the credit of Loyola, they got within one at 11-10 and 14-13, but Ohio State didn't wither as they rebuilt their lead back up to a 4-point lead, which grew to a 5-point lead, and eventually the Buckeyes took set 1 25-17 as the Buckeyes never trailed in that set. Just to add a little tidbit, this did take place at Gentile Arena in Chicago. And then set 2 was a little bit better of a start for Loyola as they led it early on, but then Ohio State started to pick it up. They led 8-7, only to score 3 straight points to lead 11-7. And Ohio State actually grew their lead to as many as 8. And just like the first set, they took it set number 2, 25-17. And just like that, Ohio State was up 2-0. And every Loyola fan in Gentile Arena was super confused as to what they were watching. This wasn't the Loyola team that upset number 7 Ball State a couple nights ago. They needed a spark, and early on it was tight through the first 18 points. Both teams were tied up at 9-9 as the biggest lead for either team was 1 point. Ohio State scored 6 straight, and scoring runs were basically the theme of this match for Ohio State. And it was a not-so-good theme for Loyola, as that 6-0 run broke a 9-9 tie, and gave Ohio State the lead at 15-9. And Loyola's chances of getting the number 1 seed were rapidly slipping away. Ohio State led 20-14, needing only 5 points to win, but Loyola wasn't going to go down without a fight, as they used a 3-0 run to cut the lead in half, forcing an Ohio State timeout. Both teams then exchanged 3-0 runs, as Ohio State led 23-20, but Ohio State won 2 of the next 3 points as they won the third set 25-21, and Ball State, all the way from Fort Wayne, was shouting, O-H-I-O, as they saw Ohio State topping Loyola, which was probably the biggest and most shocking result of this past season. Not just of this season, but of the weekend, as Ohio State was led by Jacob Pasteur, who had 16 kills. He hit .448. Samuel Clark had 15 kills. He hit .407. And Martin Lallemand had 13 kills, and he hit .458. Honestly, and also Cole Young chipped in 8 kills, and he hit .417. Ohio State as a team hit .412. When Ohio State is hitting that high of a hitting percentage, your defense did not show up. Despite out-blocking Ohio State 8.5-2, they were outdug tremendously. They were nearly doubled up, as Loyola only had 22 digs compared to Ohio State's 43. Ohio State had 9 digs apiece from Plattfoot and Jacob Pasteur. Noah Plattfoot and Jacob Pasteur. And then Parker Mikish had 10 digs, which really saw Ohio State just taking charge defensively when it came to keeping the ball alive. Loyola was led by Parker Van Buren and Cole Schlothauer, who each had 8 kills. They only had 28 kills as a team compared to Ohio State's 53, as they had to get creative when it came to scoring points. So remember when Loyola held Ball State to 0 service aces? Well, this time Loyola had the shoe on the other foot, as Loyola had 0 service aces, they missed 9 serves, and despite Ohio State missing 11 serves, Ohio State had 6 service aces, 3 of which came from Jacob Pasteur. All in all, Loyola made Ohio State, as of this present day, look like their 2017 championship team, and that is a big problem for the Ramblers, as this loss basically cost them a chance at being the number 1 seed. Now they were all just praying, just hoping they would get Purdue of Fort Wayne to upset Ball State, as this was the second noteworthy matchup of this past weekend, as Ball State headed down to Fort Wayne to take on Purdue of Fort Wayne. It all came down to this: Ball State at Purdue of Fort Wayne. If Ball State wins, they're the outright regular season champion, and they'll be the number 1 seed in the MIVA tournament. But if Purdue of Fort Wayne won, then Loyola is the number 1 seed, and Ball State has to share the regular season conference title. Set 1. If Ball State thought they were going to get an easy matchup, they thought wrong. Those two went 5 in the first matchup in Muncie, as the first time around, the Cardinals did win, but it was sure as heck wasn't easy, because this is a rivalry match. It's a crosstown rivalry match. This is what teams live for. Early on, Purdue of Fort Wayne had the lead throughout the early stages of the set as they led 12-8, and Ball State kept themselves within striking distance, but credit to the Mastodons. They kept their 4-point lead afloat, but not for too long. Ball State tied up the set at 19-19 and eventually took the lead at 22-20. Purdue of Fort Wayne made them work for that set, however, as they tied the set up at 23-23, and from there was a boxing match. 1-point lead, tie. 1-point lead, tie. Ball State needed 8 set points to close the set, but eventually closed it with a kill from Nick Martinsky, taking set 1 33-31, as it was a tough break for Purdue of Fort Wayne. They had set point at 28-27, but on their very next point, they missed the serve, which probably broke the hearts of many Mastodon fans. So set 2, Purdue of Fort Wayne never trailed in the set, as early on it was tight, but the Mastodons found a little bit of wiggle room as they used a 7-0 run, and from there, it wasn't even remotely close. The closest Ball State got was within 4, as Purdue of Fort Wayne took set 2 25-19, tying the match at 1-1, having Ball State fans hold their breath in Fort Wayne. Set 3, there were only 2 lead changes in that third set, as Ball State led early on only for the Mastodons to snatch it away and lead 4-3. But Ball State had seen enough. They used a 4-0 run to turn a 6-6 tie into a 10-6 lead, and Ball State maintained its lead despite Purdue-Fort Wayne's best efforts, cutting the lead down to as little as 1, only to see it go back by 4. The Mastodons did tie up the set at 18-18, but the celebration was brief as Ball State scored 3 in a row and put themselves up for good, giving them set 3 25-22, and Ball State was just one set away at that point from winning its first MIVA regular season championship since 2002. But Purdue-Fort Wayne was not ready to fold that easily. Early on, Ball State led 10-7 and maintained a 3-point lead throughout most of the early half of the set as they reached 15 points first. Ball State eventually led 70-12 at one point, and it looked as if they were going to pull off the win. But Purdue-Fort Wayne had other plans as they used an 8-3 run to tie the set at 20-20, and the Mastodons were just not going to go down without a fight. Purdue-Fort Wayne had the lead at 23-22 and eventually had 3 set points to try to push this match to 5 sets, but Ball State was not having any of it. After Purdue-Fort Wayne led 26-25, 2 straight errors from them, a serving and hitting error, gave Ball State its first match point, and Ball State needed only 2 match points as they clinched the match off of a block from Caleb Janis and Vanis Buckles, as Ball State, chirp chirp, for the first time since 2002, wins the MIVA regular season title with a 4-set win over Purdue-Fort Wayne, winning set 4 29-27. And this was actually their first outright conference title since 1997. So it was a long time coming for the Cardinals, as Ball State was led by Caleb Janis, who had 21 kills, hit .391. Angelos Mandelaris had 15 kills, only hit .231, which wasn't too great, but not too bad. And then Vanis Buckles added 7 kills. Ball State as a team hit .275 as they had 5 service aces, 4 of which came from Mandelaris, but they missed 20 serves. Same can be said for Purdue-Fort Wayne, except they had 3 service aces. The big stat was what really swung the momentum was blocks. Ball State had 14.5 blocks compared to Purdue-Fort Wayne's 5. The only negative for Ball State was that Purdue-Fort Wayne outdug them 59-39, which is quite surprising. Quinn Isaacson had 11 digs, while the next dig leader had 6, coming from Mandelaris and Janis. Purdue-Fort Wayne was led by John Diedrich, who had 25 kills. He was their only player that was in double digits in terms of kills, while their next kill leader was Mitch Geiger, who had 9 kills. Like I said, Purdue-Fort Wayne missed 20 serves, and they only had 3 service aces. As a team, Purdue-Fort Wayne hit .277, which wasn't bad, considering they were getting stuffed at the net quite a bit. But like I said, it just wasn't enough, as Purdue-Fort Wayne gave Ball State all that they could handle. Unfortunately, Ball State came out on top. It was a great feeling for all of the Ball State fans. Cardinals fans had been waiting for this, and honestly, they earned it. So that was how the MIVA was won in terms of the regular season, as Ball State is your 2022 regular season champion. But now comes the MIVA tournament. So the MIVA tournament consists as follows. 8 teams are in the conference, and 8 teams will duke it out in the conference tournament. It goes quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. So the quarterfinals start this weekend, as it'll be Ball State, the number 1 seed, taking on Quincy, the 8 seed. Then it'll be Loyola, the 2 seed, taking on Lindenwood, the 7 seed. Then it's McKendree, the 3 seed, taking on Purdue-Fort Wayne, the 6 seed. And then Lewis of Romeoville, the 4 seed, taking on Ohio State, the 5 seed. So basically, that's how the MIVA tournament is going to be formatted. The first round, like I said, is this weekend. Then the semifinals and finals are next weekend. And basically, Ball State has home court advantage. So you have to really be impressed by Ball State. But I think we all know the moral of the story. You have to show up in every match, because if you don't, you're basically going to doom yourself. And that was what happened with Loyola. Loyola didn't show up in their Ohio State matchup, and they wound up paying the price. Now, obviously, you're coming off of a big win over Ball State, and that's where you cannot get too high, but you also can't get too low. And Ball State did a really good job of throwing that loss away, and they knew that they couldn't control what Loyola and Ohio State was doing on Saturday. They could only control what they can control. And I'm pretty sure that all of Muncie is going to be donating to Kevin Birch's favorite charity, which Kevin Birch is the head coach of Ohio State, and he even liked the compliment that Vinny Lopes of Off the Block Volleyball made that joke on Twitter. So honestly, I think it was an impressive win for Ohio State. I'm not trying to take anything away from Ohio State, but I will say this for Loyola: they should have shown up. Like, how do you lose on the last day of the season? You have the chance to become regular season champions and the number one seed in the tournament. Now the big question for Loyola is, if they meet up with McKendree, can they actually beat McKendree? Because McKendree has beaten Loyola twice this season, both of which came in 5-set matches. And both of which, surprisingly, came with Loyola, well, both of which, like I said, they came in 5 sets, but both of which had one team taking the first 2 sets, as the first one had Loyola taking the first 2 sets, only to see McKendree reverse sweep them. Then, in the second matchup, McKendree took the first 2 sets, Loyola took the next 2 sets, and then McKendree took the 5th set overall. So, all in all, for Loyola, they are going to have to be on the same side as McKendree. But in order to get to McKendree, they're going to have to get past Lindenwood, who is a scrappy team despite having lost 5 in a row. McKendree, on the other hand, they have to go through Purdue of Fort Wayne, which is definitely a scrappy team. They really made Ball State earn that win. And honestly, I would not be surprised if Purdue of Fort Wayne made McKendree sweat, considering McKendree has had too many ups and downs this season. They've had great wins against Loyola, but unfortunately they had a couple of boo-boos down the stretch. I want to say they lost to one of the lower teams. Obviously they lost to Ohio State as of recent. So for McKendree, they're going to need to mind their P's and Q's, and they're going to need to not look ahead. Otherwise, they won't be able to face Loyola, which would give them the opportunity to possibly beat them a third time. So we'll see what happens. And then jumping over to the matchup I attended on Friday, we had Long Beach State versus UC San Diego. This was actually a two-match series, as Long Beach State coming off of the big series sweep over Hawaii, as a win would put them closer and closer to winning the Big West Conference regular season title and having the number 1 seed in the Big West Conference tournament. Adam says, how far can Loyola realistically go? Well, for me, that's a great question, Adam. So, Loyola, honestly, I don't know. I mean, for me, I don't think they can go all that far. Like, they have a very good team. However, can they stack up with the Hawaiis and the Long Beach States and the UCLAs? Because against Hawaii and Long Beach State, they went 0-3. They lost twice to Hawaii, even though it was early in the season. And then they lost to Long Beach State in straight sets in Gentile Arena. And then I don't know how they'll do against Penn State, just because Penn State has arguably their best team ever. And Loyola just cannot get lulled into a false sense of security, thinking, oh, we're better than this team by a metric ton, so let's just take it into cruise control. And I really don't know what happened with Loyola. I just couldn't believe they lost in straight sets. And the first 2 sets, they didn't even look like they were there. It felt like their bodies were there, but unfortunately, their minds weren't there. And it's realistically sad, because Loyola had a great opportunity to obviously avoid McKendree and put all the pressure on Ball State. unfortunately, it just didn't work out for them, and it's disappointing because not only did they lose in straight sets to Ohio State, they lost after they were coming off of an impressive 3-set win over a top 10 team. So that's what was disappointing to Loyola. As for how far can they realistically go, I would probably say no further than maybe the quarterfinals. I think they're probably going to get slapped into the quarterfinals just because the NCAA tournament does things really weird. I think they give the top 2 seeds a bye up until the semifinals, and then I think it goes quarterfinal bye, and then it goes first round matchup. I believe it's going to be 8 teams this year, and I'm not entirely sure how the format's going to go because the NCAA men's volleyball tournament committee likes to format things really weird. And all I could tell you is that there's going to be 6 automatic qualifiers, and I think there's going to be 2 at-larges. There's this new conference, which I'm actually blanking on. Then there's the Conference Carolinas. Then they have the MIVA, then the EIVA, then the MPSF, and then the Big West Conference. So that right there is basically 6 automatic qualifiers, and then there's 2 at-larges. If Loyola doesn't win the MIVA, I don't think they get in as an at-large, just because, just like NJIT's situation, is their resume going to be good enough to overtake Hawaii or USC or whoever comes in second in the MPSF? Like, I don't know if Loyola can get in as an at-large, just because they haven't really been top 10 all season, and they've had their ups and downs throughout the season. And Adam says, no matter the sport, you have to stay mentally engaged. And I totally agree with that. So basically, it's win the MIVA tournament or you're not qualifying for the NCAA tournament. And if you do qualify as an at-large, then you're probably going to get the longest path to the final, which would basically be first round, then quarterfinals, then semifinals, and then finals. So jumping back to UC San Diego at Long Beach State. So this was quite the interesting matchup that I attended. The first set was just a straight-up barn burner. 20 ties and 7 lead changes as both teams were not giving an inch. UC San Diego did go up by as many as 3, and they had multiple set points. Unfortunately for the Tritons, they just could not seal the deal. They had so many points they would like to have back. And then when Long Beach State had set point at 30-29, they were able to take advantage of it as they won the first set 31-29. And I want to say, winning that first set really sucked the life out of UC San Diego the rest of the way. As the second set, there were 9 ties and 4 lead changes, but eventually Long Beach State was able to pull away, and basically they didn't dominate as they did in the next set, but they won the second set quite convincingly, 25-18. Like I said, it was tight early on, and then Long Beach State just started to make the big plays. They had Alex Nikolov coming up big, Spencer Olivier coming up big. They even had, in that second set, what I think was the turning point, Calvin Sanborn serving not 1, not 2, but 3 service aces in a row, as that basically turned a 3-point lead into a 6-point lead, as I think that was what mentally and physically wore down UC San Diego. And then the third set, Long Beach State just had no intention of slowing down. Basically, they were blocking everything that UC San Diego threw at them. They were just spiking everything through the block. It was just amazing gameplay from Long Beach State as they dominated the third set and won it off of a service ace from Nathan Harlan, as they won the third set 25-12, sweeping UC San Diego, as the beach was led by Alex Nikolov, who had 13 kills, only 1 hitting error for a hitting percentage of .667. Olivier had 11 kills with a hitting percentage of .350, while Simon Torwey, the middle blocker, did most of his damage in set number 3, as he had 8 kills and hitting .545 when it came to his hitting percentage. He came up really big, as honestly, Alan Knipe loves to shuffle his middle blockers around. He loves to basically just switch them around between Shane Holdaway, Mark Moody, Simon Torwey, and Grant Maroki. Like, he even said one time in an interview that, or a post-game press conference, that they have depth in terms of middle blockers and not just their pin hitters. It's just that they're pretty much equally balanced. And I'm just paraphrasing here, as one night it might be Mark Moody, then the next night it might be Shane Holdaway, and the next night it might be Grant Maroki, and then the next night it might be Simon Torwey. So all in all, for Long Beach State, it was just a strong night for them overall. Whereas UC San Diego was led by Kyle McCauley, who had 9 kills. Shane Bennett had 8 kills. Wyatt Harrison had 6 kills. Overall, UC San Diego hit only 243 compared to Long Beach State's 391. That is not going to get the job done. The thing that really hurt UC San Diego was they got outblocked 13.5 to 3.5. That will not get you the job done. What was worse is that UC San Diego only had 1 service ace compared to 7 from Long Beach, and they also missed 16 serves compared to Long Beach State's 13. So it was just not a pretty night for UC San Diego. This was one of those nights where UC San Diego just needed to flush that game down the toilet and just move on. After the game, I caught up with UC San Diego men's volleyball coach Kevin Ring following his team's loss to Long Beach State. All right, Kev, obviously this was a tough loss for you all, losing on the road to Long Beach. What happened in that first set that unfortunately just kind of carried over to sets 2 and 3?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about after that first set loss, there's, a few plays that I think every player would have liked to have had back, 1 or 2 plays here or there. But we actually each guy had 4 or 5 plays, which were exactly what we needed. And sometimes when you play a team of Long Beach State's caliber, sometimes you get those really close games like that. We had a chance to side out to win that first set. We didn't get that done, and we had some chances to serve for the set, didn't get it done, and those almost become kind of these must-have situations. And so, hey, we lost that one, close game. We move on to set 2, set 3, and we just, we got to have a little more composure and be able to kind of just get back on track, find what we did well, and that they're going to kind of get going, and they played better. Certainly kept the pressure on us from the service line, and our passing broke down, and we just didn't have the same offensive production.
Okay, now jumping over to the season overall, what are the positives that have been for this season, and what can you say about your standouts so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's, we've had a few kind of ups and downs, but, we've played some pretty high-level volleyball. We've done a nice job so far in conference. We've had a couple of real nice non-conference victories. For us, it's just trying to, we've kind of solidified our lineup, and we're just trying to find our brand of volleyball. And, we hit it in stretches, but you look at it, you go, hey, that's a high-level volleyball, but we still have too many lapses right now where we kind of fall off the pace a little bit, and when you play a team of this caliber, they're going to take advantage.
And then, who have been your standout players this season?
Yeah, Kyle McCauley for sure. I mean, he gets a heavy load with swings. Teams are going to key on him. He hits left side, right side, out of the back row for the BIC for us. Blake Crisp has done a nice job running our offense throughout the season. It's nice to have Wyatt Harrison. He was out for stretches with injuries, so it's nice to have him back. And then both our middles, Logan and Shane. I mean, we want to find ways to get those 2 guys the ball more often because they both do a real nice job offensively. And, so yeah, we got a match tomorrow night with Long Beach State. We got to pick it up.
And then obviously the Big West Conference tournament isn't for a couple of weeks. You still have your match tomorrow, and then you have next week against Santa Barbara. Well, what will it take to win the Big West Conference tournament as it came so close last year?
Yeah, for sure. We'll find out whatever our seed's going to be, whoever will match up in round 1. But, you get to that point, the margin there is real small. And, I think a lot of teams are getting healthier, and they're trending up. So, we've got to be able to do that ourselves. and we talked about, the kind of 3 phases to our season: non-conference, conference play, and then the conference tournament. And we wanted to be playing our best volleyball come conference tournament time. So we'll have some time back in practice, Jim, and we've got to solidify some areas of our game right now.
So that was my post-game interview with UC San Diego men's volleyball coach Kevin Ring, UC San Diego alum as well. So overall, it was just not UC San Diego's night. Sorry, my bad. I meant to mute that, but I just was not quick enough. But back to the match. Yeah, it was just a very, very forgettable match for UC San Diego. And he made a good point when it comes to the conference tournament. The margin of error is very, very, very minimal. You have to play your best volleyball. And honestly, it doesn't matter who you're facing or where you're facing. You have to come up big, because if you don't, you're basically going to see your season come to an end. Because when it comes to the postseason, whether it's in the conference play or the NCAA tournament, it's win or go home. Everyone is 0-0. No one cares what you did in the regular season, unless you basically are undefeated like Hawaii was last year, and then you got an at-large. But regardless, you basically are 0-0, and you have to come up big, and you have to make sure your margin of error is 0. Because at this point for UC San Diego, I could still see them contending in the Big West Conference. My problem is this: can they win at Hawaii like they did last year? Keep in mind, there's going to be Hawaii fans like there were this past weekend. It's not going to be like last year where there were no fans, and then it was just sound effects, and then UC San Diego won because they were UC San Diego, and they were everyone's basically underdog. Well, not quite underdog, but they were basically the feel-good story of the tournament, and they almost pulled off the win. They almost pulled off winning the tournament. They just fell short to Santa Barbara. But for UC San Diego, they're really going to have to buckle down as jumping into their second match against Long Beach State. This one took place at the Rimac Arena in La Jolla, San Diego. So Long Beach State, if they were to have won this match, if they were to win this match, they'd lock up the number 1 seed, and they'd be at least co-conference champions in the Big West Conference. So set 1, Long Beach State meant business. They never trailed in the set, and then was only tied once at 1-1. Something they've been doing on back-to-back nights was shuffling their middle blocker. Like I mentioned previously, they are deep within their middle blocker position. The previous night, they had Mark Moody starting at middle, but then this, along with Simon Torwey. But this time, Grant Maroki got the nod to start with Torwey. To the match, UC San Diego tried to keep it close, but Long Beach State had other plans. They led 9-7 when they went on a 7-1 run to go up 16-8, and then Long Beach State led by as many as 11 as they rolled past UC San Diego, winning set 1 25-16. And it looked as if we were going to get the same night as last night. But then UC San Diego had quite enough of that as they jumped out to an early 4-1 lead. And Long Beach State eventually tied it up at 4-4. From there, neither team led by as many as 3 points as they headed to the 15-point mark. To UC San Diego's credit, they led 15-14, and while Long Beach State was taking its best shot to try to take the lead and possibly win the set, the Tritons had an answer for Long Beach State. UC San Diego actually went up 21-18 when Long Beach State got to within 2 following a kill from Clark Godbold. But UC San Diego scored the next 4 points to take that second set 25-19 to even the match at 1-1, and that's when Rimac Arena was starting to get energized, get up off its feet. Then in set 3, UC San Diego built off that momentum from set 2 as they jumped out to an early 3-0 lead. The lead actually expanded to 11-6, and it looked as if we were going to get I wouldn't say blowout, but an insurmountable lead to the point where Long Beach couldn't come back from. But we all need to remember, this is Long Beach State. No lead is safe with them in men's volleyball. Long Beach State eventually tied it up at 17-17, courtesy of a Calvin Sanborn service ace. And everyone thought, oh God, this guy's on the service line again. We are in for a long night. But UC San Diego had other plans, as it actually proved to be the only tie of set 3, as UC San Diego went on a 6-2 run, and that paved the way to them taking set 3 25-20, as UC San Diego never trailed in that set. And at that point, Rimac was rocking. The Tritons, going into this match, had last won against Long Beach State on March 15th, 2012. Everyone in Rimac was starting to believe that was a Tritons fan. But Long Beach State was not going to go down that easily. Early on in set 4, it was tied 7-7, as both teams were trying to get a feel for one another. Long Beach State went on a 6-0 run to make a 7-7 tie, 13-7 in favor of them. They led by as many as 7 and never trailed, but to the credit of UC San Diego, they were never out of the set. They kept chipping away at the lead, slowly but surely. And sure enough, they got to within 1 at 21-20, and everyone at Rimac was starting to believe they could come back. But Long Beach State scored 3 unanswered to give them some breathing room, and Grant Maroki gave them set 4 off of a kill in the middle, winning that set 25-21, forcing a set 5. Then set 5, Long Beach State snapped a 2-2 tie with a 3-0 run, leading 5-2 and forcing a UC San Diego timeout. The timeout worked for the Tritons, as much like the last set, they slowly but surely chipped away at the lead. But unlike set 4, UC San Diego took the lead at 8-7, following back-to-back uncharacteristic hitting errors from Long Beach State. Following a service error from the Tritons, it was basically a boxing match. Basically, one team had the lead, the other team took it back. But this time, it was UC San Diego scoring and taking a 1-point lead, only to see Long Beach State take it back. With the two teams tied at 11-11, UC San Diego went on a 3-0 run courtesy of a Long Beach State service error and back-to-back kills from Ryan Kaw. And just like that, it was match point for UC San Diego. Every Triton fan was on their feet. And despite a kill from Spencer Olivier, Long Beach State just could not contain UC San Diego as they won the match on the second match point from a kill in the middle from Logan Clark, as the Tritons took set 5, 15-12, and for the first time in over 10 years, UC San Diego beat Long Beach State in men's volleyball. The celebration was on in Rimac. This was definitely the biggest win of UC San Diego's season. Long Beach State, unfortunately, suffers its second conference loss as their fourth loss overall, as well as all of their losses have come in 5 sets. They have not won a 5-set match all season long, and you kind of got to wonder about that if you're Alan Knipe. Jumping over to the stats, UC San Diego was led by Kyle McCauley, who had 17 kills. Ryan Kaw chipped in 14 kills, and Shane Bennett had 12 kills while hitting .556. Wyatt Harrison chipped in 9 kills as well, as UC San Diego as a team hit .331, and they also had 7 service aces, with 5 of which coming from Kyle McCauley, and then they missed 15 serves, which obviously isn't good, but what can you do? Long Beach State, on the other hand, was led by Alex Nikolov, who had 17 kills, a hitting percentage of .324, and he had a career-high 6 service aces, as he had more service aces than he had service errors. He also chipped in 8 digs, so Nikolov is making a big case for that Big West Conference Freshman of the Year. Spencer Olivier chipped in 16 kills, while Clark Godbold added 11 kills. They didn't get too many kills from their middles, as they only got 7 kills total from their 2 middles, as Grant Maroki had 4 kills, while Simon Torwey had 3 kills. Long Beach State had 11 service aces compared to 12 service errors. Their big stat that they kind of dominated in was blocks, as they had 13 blocks compared to 9.5 from UC San Diego. The thing that did kind of do them in was the digs, as UC San Diego outdug Long Beach State 40-33. In terms of UC San Diego in that department, they were led by Blake Crisp, who had 9 digs to go along with his 38 assists, while Long Beach State was led by Mason Briggs and Alex Nikolov, who each had 8 digs. As a team, Long Beach State hit .276, which obviously is not the best hitting percentage, it's not where they want to be. Normally, when you see Long Beach State in men's volleyball, they're hitting in like the 300s because they have a lot of good pin hitters. But unfortunately, they just cannot get that big swing and that big win over UC San Diego, as they'll have to wait on becoming at least co-conference champions and getting that number 1 seed. As jumping over to the other Big West matches in terms of quick hits, we had Hawaii defeating UC Santa Barbara twice. They beat them in 3 sets on Friday, and then they went the distance on Saturday, winning in 5 sets. And then other quick hits from all over the NCAA men's volleyball world. We had Penn State just continuing its dominance in the EIVA as they managed to win a whopping 15 straight conference wins. And in addition to that, they won their 18th in a row as they swept St. Francis of Brooklyn and NJIT at home. UCLA clinched the MPSF regular season championship with 2 wins over Pepperdine this past weekend, as UCLA is now the number 1 seed in the up-and-coming MPSF tournament. Staying in the MPSF, Stanford had a wild ending to the weekend as they swept its series against BYU. The second match was actually a 5-set thriller, which saw Stanford reverse sweep BYU and win set 5, 24-22, which was absolutely bananas. That basically was amongst some of the wackier matchups and crazier matchups that we had in the NCAA men's volleyball world on Saturday. And then jumping to the Conference Carolinas, North Greenville is your regular season champion as they defeated Lee's McCrae's and Emmanuel this past week. And in addition, Mount Olive lost to King on the last day of the regular season, which gave North Greenville the number 1 seed in the up-and-coming Conference Carolinas tournament and the outright regular season champion. So that is basically your NCAA men's volleyball week 14 recap. Let's jump on into the AVCA coaches poll, as we're kind of going to need to speed through most of this because we have another show coming on. So jumping to the AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll, 15 through 11 consists of McKendree at 15, UC Irvine at 14, Lewis at 13, Stanford at 12, and Loyola of Chicago at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Grand Canyon at 10, UC San Diego at 9, Pepperdine at 8, Ball State at 7, and UC Santa Barbara at 6. 5 through 1 consists of USC at 5, Hawaii at 4, Long Beach State at 3, Penn State at 2, and your still number 1 team in the AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll is UCLA. So basically, UCLA is kind of separating itself from that number 2, number 3 spot, as UCLA does have wins over Long Beach State and Penn State, even though UCLA lost to Long Beach State. And then overall, it's basically going to come down to this final week. Unless, of course, UCLA loses both of its matches to BYU, I think they're basically the number 1 seed, barring them not winning the MPSF tournament. So it's going to be quite the fun final week, as we'll actually jump to a little bit of NCAA beach volleyball, as there was only one, I wouldn't say big upset, and I use the word big loosely, as jumping to the AVCA beach coaches volleyball poll from last week, we have 20 through 16 consists of Florida Gulf Coast at 20, Stetson at 19, South Carolina at 18, Arizona at 17, and Pepperdine at 16. 15 through 11 consists of FIU at 15, or Florida International, Long Beach State at 14, Georgia State at 13, Cal at 12, and Cal Poly at 11. 10 through 6 consist of Florida Atlantic, or FAU, at 10, Stanford at 9, Hawaii at 8, Grand Canyon at 7, and LMU, or Loyola Marymount, at 6. 5 through 1 consist of LSU at 5, Florida State at 4, UCLA at 3, dropping from the number 1 spot, TCU at 2, and your new number 1 team in the AVCA Collegiate Beach Volleyball Coaches Poll is USC, which basically had himself a perfect week last week, or the previous week when this poll came out. So USC is back where they belong. And as for the upset that did happen this past weekend, that consisted of Florida State toppling TCU in 4-1, which was quite impressive. For Florida State to do that, I think they threw their name in the contenders hat. I really think beach volleyball, it's up for grabs this season because we've seen a lot of close matches. We've seen matches come down to the final pairs, which to me I think is going to be quite interesting going forward because there are actually some matches that honestly could have gone either way, and it actually has come down to third sets. Like LSU had a few of their pairs come down to the third set as well. As the only thing I think I can think of in terms of its own promise is that it's number 2 pair, which I'm blanking on the second girl, but the first girl is Kylie DeBerg. As honestly, Kylie DeBerg has done wonders for LSU, and she's made the great transition as it's DeBerg and Agnew Green. I don't know Agnew Green's first name, but honestly, Kylie DeBerg has done wonders for LSU's beach volleyball team, as DeBerg is and her partner have actually moved up to the number 2 team, and it's actually become a DeBerg. If you all don't know, she transferred from Missouri, and she decided to use her last year of eligibility playing indoor volleyball at LSU and then playing beach volleyball to close out her college career before she heads off into the pros or heads off into the sunset. Either way, LSU is solid, especially with that number 2 pair. That's the thing that I think is really proving to keep LSU afloat. Now, for USC, they were obviously... USC and UCLA were both dominant, as they played in the Pac-12 North matchup, or the Pac-12 North trip. Either way, they went up north, played quite a bit of Pac-12 teams, and I'm just going to say this, USC and UCLA are way ahead of the rest of the Pac-12. Not even Stanford and Cal can keep up with USC and UCLA. I really think that it's going to boil down to USC and UCLA when it comes to winning that Pac-12 tournament. Either way, I think the Trojans are definitely playing great as of late. I lost track of how many matches they've won, as they definitely have won. They've definitely looked great after losing to UCLA. They have won 22 straight matches, or duels, as they have the third longest winning streak in its team's history, as they also pitched its 16th shutout of the season, as they defeated teams such as Oregon and Stanford and whatnot. So all in all for USC, it looks like they're back when it comes to dominating. They also beat Arizona as well. I think they beat Arizona and not Stanford. Maybe I'm thinking of last week. So regardless, USC is just playing on another level. And they did beat Stanford this past weekend. So they beat Stanford, which was number 9. So I was very surprised Stanford didn't give them more of a battle. But honestly, that just goes to show that USC and UCLA are on a whole nother level. And it's going to come down to those two teams, and it's going to be really interesting. And for UCLA, can UCLA be the kryptonite to USC? It still remains to be seen. They have good pairs all around. And honestly, I think for the Bruins, they need not worry about those 2 losses to TCU. They just have to worry about their own P's and Q's and what's on the docket for this upcoming week. So, honestly, I really think that they have got it made going forward. I think they're going to be just fine, and when they meet USC's got to be prepared for battle, because USC's only blemish came at the hands of UCLA, and I think it's going to be basically between those two teams, not just in the Pac-12, I think also in the NCAA. UCLA has Florida State, Loyola Marymount, and this Saturday they are playing USC. This will be played in San Luis Obispo. This is basically the Center of Effort Challenge. Florida State is also going to be a challenge as well. And then LMU is kind of a sneaky, interesting team. They had themselves a little bit of a rough weekend, having lost to Hawaii, and I also think they lost to Grand Canyon. But they avenged those two losses the final day of their little tournament that they played in this past weekend. Just got to oh no, they didn't lose to Grand Canyon. They beat Grand Canyon both times, as they lost to Hawaii on Saturday, but then they avenged that win with a close win over Hawaii on Sunday. So, like I said, LMU has a gauntlet this weekend. They have the number 4, number 3, and number 1 team this weekend. If LMU can beat one of those teams, they could also throw their name in the contenders hat. But my goodness, that's going to be a challenge. And then poor Cal Poly, they are the host team. However, they got to face those teams that I just mentioned. LMU, Florida State, that's basically top 6 teams right there. So we'll see if Cal Poly can hold its own against anyone. And we'll see who comes out undefeated. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if no team was undefeated. Just because, like I said, NCAA beach volleyball is up for grabs this year. Well, that's going to do it for the NCAA Beach Volleyball Talk. We'll take ourselves a quick little commercial breaky break. When we come back, we got the NVA to recap, and then we got the final week of the NCAA Men's Volleyball regular season. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
From the shores of the Puget Sound to the rushing waters of the Columbia River, stretching across the Great Cascades, and on IE Sports Radio lives the Northwest Territory Sports Show, hosted by me, Brad Buckingham. On this show, I cover all the great collegiate and professional sport teams that we have here in the Pacific Northwest. Of course, I'm talking about the Seattle Seahawks, Seattle Mariners, Sounders, and even the Seattle Kraken. But I can't forget all of that is good in Oregon either. I got the Trailblazers, the Oregon Ducks, the Beavers, even the Timbers, and much, much more. You can listen to the show every Sunday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern, noon to 1 p.m. Pacific on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, sports fans? Are you looking for the latest on Northern California sports? Then take a trip out west with me, your host, Gina G, on Reppin' to NorCal Sports, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'll be bringing it to you all the way live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's always a packed show. I'll bring you everything Dynastic 49ers, the bite of the San Jose Sharks, torture of the San Francisco Giants, the Golden State Warriors that we still believe. Then take you across the bay to the rise and grind of the Oakland A's. I've got you covered on college ball from the Cal Bears to the Stanford Cardinal, so that no matter what, reppin' in NorCal sports is always reppin' the Bay. So if you bleed red and gold, or you're looking to keep an eye out west in them thar hills, don't miss me, Gina G, on reppin' in NorCal sports. Catch me every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and I'll have your fandom repped harder than a trio of defenders guarding Stephen Curry before his buzzer beater is Gucci.
That is right, everybody. Definitely do check out Reppin' NorCal Sports and Northwest Territory Sports with Brad Buckingham and Reppin' NorCal Sports with Gina G. Both of those hosts do a great job when it comes to their shows, and I highly recommend them. So, welcome back to the second half of Set Point. We're going to try to speed through this as quick as possible just because in about 18 minutes we have another show coming on as the Soccer Scoreboard Show with Andrew Hagenbaugh. He does an outstanding job talking soccer. He really does, not just in the MLS, but in all the leagues such as the Bundesliga, the Premier League, you name it. Jumping on over to the NVA, so the first event or weekend is in the books, and we had ourselves quite a good number of showings coming from new teams that made their debuts to dramatic matches that basically had me on the edge of my seat, to basically teams that just had a rough weekend because they didn't have all their players. So jumping to the season opener, or the league, the 2022 season opener, we had the Orange County Stunners taking on the Seattle Sasquatch. The Stunners won this match 3-1. To the credit of the Sasquatch, they came alive in the third set after dropping the first two, but the Stunners showed why they were the reigning NVA champions from last year. They don't have Nick Amato, but they do have Matt Hilling, who has a strong arm from the right side. So the Stunners picked up their first victory of the season. The second match came from the Utah Stingers, as the Stingers brought out their Stingers as they wound up stinging the Kraken in their season debut, as they won that one. I want to say they won in 4 sets as well. If not, it was 3 sets. Regardless, it was quite the opener for the Stingers. The Stingers didn't really hold too much back, in my opinion. I think Utah showed their dominance, as honestly, it was kind of to be expected, as actually it was a 5-set match. My apologies, as the Utah Stingers actually outlasted the Colorado Kraken in 5 sets. So honestly, for the Kraken to pull off nearly an upset over a strong Utah team is very impressive. As we welcome Andrew Hagenbaugh in the chat room. He says, "What's up, Teran?" Hey, Andrew, I'm just recapping some NVA and then jumping into NCAA men's volleyball Week 15, or the final week of the regular season. So, back to the NVA. Now this was probably the craziest matchup of the weekend. Las Vegas Ramblers versus Southern Exposure. So, this matchup was the third matchup of day 1. So, Southern Exposure took the first 2 sets, and then in typical Las Vegas Ramblers fashion, they won the next 2 sets. They don't have Brandon Rattray anymore, but they do have probably the next best thing, an outside hitter who I have seen personally, Jordan Hoppy. I saw him back in his junior college days at Orange Coast College. And then the 5th set, it was quite wacky. Southern Exposure trailed 14-13 as they were facing 1 match point. They hit the ball out, but luckily for them, they had a challenge. They used that challenge on that point that they thought they hit out. They were thinking that it was touched. Originally, the initial call was no touch, but then after further replay, there was a touch. So everyone was thinking 14-14 tie, right? Well, upon a further review on that review, the ball was not touched. So the Las Vegas Ramblers edged out Southern Exposure 15-13, as Southern Exposure just basically had their hearts ripped out, and Las Vegas could basically breathe a sigh of relief as that might have been the wackiest matchup ever, just because, my goodness, for that to happen to Southern Exposure, I do feel bad for Southern Exposure having their hearts ripped out like that on a reverse call. So, and then the last matchup of the evening was the Los Angeles Blaze versus the Texas Tyrants. The Tyrants obviously have the strong arm of Gianluca Grasso, as it wasn't just him, it was many players, as the Tyrants swept the Los Angeles Blaze as the Tyrants registered their first win of the season. Jumping over to day 2, we had Team Freedom, which was also called the New Jersey Freedom, taking on a Seattle Sasquatch. Seattle was able to pull off a first set. They managed to pull off winning their first ever set in the NVA over the Stunners, but Team Freedom wasn't going to give them that leeway, as they only needed less than 90 minutes as they swept Seattle. Tough weekend for Seattle, going 0-2, but it is a long season. Then we had the Dallas Tornadoes taking on the Colorado Kraken. The Tornadoes blew by the Kraken, no pun intended, as they won their first match of the season. As Dallas is in its second year, they also were able to defeat their former head coach, Jonathan Dasselson, as the Kraken finished the weekend 0-2, but it is still a long season. Jumping over to the third matchup, we had the Chicago Untouchables taking on the Los Angeles Blaze. Now, this one was also a crazy matchup. The Blaze, now, for those that know the Chicago Untouchables story, they did not have their full team due to transportation issues. They couldn't get everyone on the plane over to the Pierce Sports Center in San Bernardino. So the Chicago Untouchables were unfortunately shorthanded this weekend. But to their credit, they hung tough with the Los Angeles Blaze. They were able to take it to a fifth set, which was quite impressive. With the fourth set being the most dramatic set, we had a lot of sets going to the 30s in NCAA men's volleyball. Get this. Chicago Untouchables beat the Blaze in set 4, 36-34, forcing a fifth set against the Blaze. But unfortunately for the Untouchables, the Blaze outdid them in the fifth set, 15-10, as the Untouchables started the season off 0-1, while the Blaze got their first win of the season, which was quite impressive. And the final matchup of the night of Saturday was Southern Exposure versus the Inland Empire Matadors. They actually rebranded from Ontario to Inland Empire. So the Matadors surprisingly took the first set, and I was like, okay, this Matadors team looks legit. I think this team has potential. And then Southern Exposure showed why it won its division last year, or won its conference last year, as they took the next 3 sets as Southern Exposure basically gentlemen swept the Matadors. So honestly, it was kind of to be expected. No offense to the Matadors. They're trying their hardest. They're doing all they can to try to keep up with some of these big boy teams. But unfortunately, Southern Exposure was just too much for them. So now for day number 3 in event number 2, we had the Texas Tyrants taking on the Chicago Untouchables. The Untouchables just basically still being shorthanded, trying to keep pace with Chicago or with Texas, but unfortunately they just could not pull out the win as Chicago fell to the Texas Tyrants in 5 sets. The 5th set was very tight as they lost that one 15-13. Chicago unfortunately lost off of a ball handling error, which is the worst way to lose. It's almost as worse as losing off of a missed serve. And to other sports perspectives, it's almost like missing a game-tying or game-winning field goal. So, honestly, you have to feel bad for Chicago, but they pushed Texas to the limit. I really think the Chicago Untouchables have so much potential. It's all about getting everybody on that court together. If they do so, then that's a team that no one wants to face. Then the second match we had the Utah Stingers take on the Dallas Tornadoes. The Tornadoes, when it comes to the wind versus the insect, the wind more times than not wins. as the Tornadoes took the first set, but the Stingers spread their wings and they were able to ride the wins as they took the next 3 sets, moving to 2-0 on the season and handing Dallas their first loss of the season. Now, this was probably the stunner of the weekend, and this is no pun intended. Team Freedom, or the New Jersey Freedom, upended the Orange County Stunners, which was definitely a event. It was definitely a result that no one saw coming, as Team Freedom took the first 2 sets, and it looked as if everyone was wondering, what is going on with the Orange County Stunners? Well, then the third set, the Stunners kind of showed who they really were, champions from last year. But then in the fourth set, Team Freedom managed to barely win that set, 25-23, as they took the match 3-1, as they finished up the weekend 2-0 while handing the Stunners their first loss of the season. Very impressive win for Team Freedom, as they're proving why they were a contender in the Eastern Conference. And then the last match of event number 1 was the Las Vegas Ramblers pretty much steamrolling their way to victory over the Inland Empire Matadors in straight sets. It was no straight surprise there, as Jordan Hoppe led the way for the Ramblers. Tough loss for the Matadors, as unfortunately they're going to have to... They'll try to get it together, but it's only week 1. They have plenty of time to turn it around. So that is the NVA matchup in a nutshell. Those were all the NVA matchups from week 1 or event number 1. The next event will be on May 6th going through May 8th. It'll still take place at the Pierce Sports Center in San Bernardino. We'll see if, hopefully one day I can get there, but with my whirlwind schedule, it's probably going to be doubtful. So that is that for the NVA. Now let's jump on into the final week of the NCAA men's volleyball season. I don't really have a match of the week per se, as pretty much every conference has been finalized. The MIVA was won by Ball State. Conference Carolinas was won by North Greenville. UCLA won the MPSF. And then the EIVA was locked up by Penn State. So if I had to choose a match of the week, I'd probably choose USC Grand Canyon. But I don't think that's basically the battle for second place. I don't think anyone is going to really consider that a match of the week right there. Nothing against USC and Grand Canyon, but honestly, it's just not a match of the week. Because UCLA has won the MPSF regular season title, and they are the number 1 seed. But USC and Grand Canyon are both tied in the standings at 6-4 as they play one another. I think that's going to be a great matchup right there. I really think that it's going to be a barn burner, and we'll see what happens with the Trojans and the Lopes. I really think the Trojans have come alive this season. I think they have that potential, and what my biggest concern is for USC is, can they avoid falling to that number 4 spot? Because if they finish number 4 in the MPSF, that would mean they'd be on the same side of the bracket as UCLA. And UCLA has been slowing down for no one in the MPSF. Except for Stanford that one time where they lost in 5 sets, but I digress. So jumping over to the Big West, we have Long Beach State and CSUN facing one another on Friday and Saturday. Long Beach will be the host team on Friday, and then CSUN will be the host on Saturday. CSUN is Cal State Northridge, so it's quite simple for Long Beach State. You win, and you're the number 1 seed, and you're at least co-conference champion. You win both games, then you are basically the outright regular season conference champion. And then you're still the number 1 seed as well. For Hawaii, on the other hand, they still have a chance to become conference champions in the regular season outright, and they still have a chance to be the number 1 seed. However, it's going to take CSUN beating Long Beach State both times, and also it's going to take Hawaii beating UC Irvine twice. So the problem with that is that UC Irvine is a very good home team. They're 7-4 at the Bren Event Center. While that's not the greatest record, you have to remember their body of work at the Bren. They beat Long Beach State in a reverse sweep. They also beat Pepperdine there. So all in all, for Hawaii, I do not think they should be underestimating the Anteaters at any point. And then the last noteworthy matchup for this week is UC San Diego at UC Santa Barbara at UC San Diego. It's going to be a barn burner, as those two teams are actually tied for third place, and whoever wins will be avoiding Long Beach State in the Big West Conference tournament. Whoever wins will be the third seed, unless, of course, Hawaii loses twice, and then they fall to the 4 seed. And then whoever loses is basically going to be the number 4 seed, and they'll have the unfortunate honor of playing Long Beach State, possibly in the semifinals, barring any upsets, of course. Unless, of course, Long Beach State doesn't get the first round bye. And if they don't get the first round bye, then, boy howdy, then I have some questions that need to be asked. So that is pretty much that when it comes to me speeding through the NCAA men's volleyball week 15 / last week of the regular season matches. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. It is that time, ladies and gentlemen, to drop that beat, because in about 3 minutes we have the Soccer Scoreboard show coming on. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any point, at any time of the day, I appreciate you. Shout out to the chat room, Adam Karnick, who kept me company throughout most of the show. Shout out to Andrew Hegenbaum, who came in for the second half of the show. I really do appreciate you. It's a great show, Teran. Hey, and great win for your Ohio State Buckeyes, beating not only Loyola of Chicago, but Purdue of Fort Wayne as well. I think Ohio State could do damage in the MIVA. We'll see. I'll keep you updated on that, buddy. But for everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You'll have yourselves a great rest of the week. The SoCal Supreme Sports Show will be off this weekend, so don't expect an episode there. But do be wary. Do not get yourself on Dum Dum of the Week. Otherwise, I will basically just make you Dum Dum of the Week. Anyway, you all have yourself a great week, and I will probably see you on Friday for some updates on CISA Long Beach State. Peace!